All right, thanks for having me here today. My name is Alex Wolf. I lead the design and development for the new Angular 2 site. Today what we're going to do is we're going to cover some user experience topics and go over some fundamental design principles that you guys can use when you're creating experiences for your developers. So before I start, I want to rewind a little bit and just talk a little bit about how I got involved in this project. I recently joined Google through a Firebase acquisition, and my good buddy David, he introduced me to the Angular core team. And so when I met them, they were really honest and open, and they came to me and said, look, we know our docs, they need a lot of help. They're not that good right now. We've seen what you guys have done for Firebase. We love your docs over there. What can we do to make our docs awesome? So let's talk about those docs and why docs are so important. So before I started the redesign for the Firebase docs, it was pretty clear to us that we had some serious problems. Problems similar to the ones on the Angular JS site. We had a ton of people writing in, complaining. They couldn't find what they wanted. We had tons of support tickets. But most of all, we knew from looking at the analytics that people were spending the majority of their time in our docs, trying to learn stuff. And so it doesn't take a genius to realize this is a huge opportunity for us, if we can get it right. I spent the next few months researching, designing, building, and working with the entire team to try to create something amazing, something really special. And it turned out that that effort actually had a much bigger impact than any one of us could have imagined. Not only in signups, revenue, and adoption, but in love. And so what do I mean by that? Well, why don't I show you guys? So these are tweets from our actual customers about docs. We had tons of them. We had people writing in with emails telling us how much they love our docs, thanking us. And it's pretty amazing to us that people would actually tweet about docs. And sometimes people even loved them a little too much. So today we're going to cover a few key concepts that I use successfully at Firebase and also on the new Angular website. First one, setting some clear goals when you're designing, identifying your problems, understanding your users, and designing with your goals in mind. So let's start with the first one. When I started to design the new Angular site, I worked really closely with the core team, and we wanted to answer some fundamental questions. Why are we doing this? What's this new site for? What are we trying to accomplish? And we came up with actually just two fundamental goals that drive the entire site. Teach our users how to use Angular and get them to install it. And it turns out if you can just do those two things really well, you actually have a great framework. You have a pretty great website. So we have some site goals, but our pages, they actually need goals too. People have a bunch of questions when they come to a site. They want to know, is this for me? Does this have the features that I want, that I need? And what should I do next? But probably the most important thing you can answer when someone comes to your site for the first time is, what is this? Because when you don't answer that fundamental question of what is this product, what is this thing, it makes it really hard to answer any of the other questions there. So we know what we want. We've covered some goals. I want to talk about some of the current challenges that we had on the old website. Let's go over those and see how those don't align with some of the goals that we set out. So we know we have some issues with the navigation. It's pretty confusing. We have 22 different navigation options. Half of them take you away from the site. There's confusing language, learn, develop. I still haven't figured out the difference between the two. And there's no clear call to action. We give people pretty much everything in this navigation. And the thing is when you give your users every option available, you actually relinquish control of the user experience. You can no longer guide them down a path to achieve those goals that you set out to do. They become lost, confused, overwhelmed. So one of the other problems that we had is we didn't really make it clear what is Angular. We have a bunch of things on this page. We have calls to action, we have navigation, value props, comparisons. We never really answered this question that well. I guess we tried HTML enhanced for web apps, but is that really what Angular is? Sounds like mustache to me, or handlebars. And the thing is, Angular is not just enhanced HTML. It's a development platform for building amazing mobile and desktop web applications. That's a much bigger deal than enhanced HTML. Another thing that we struggled on is showing the user what's next. We have no clear primary action here. We have a bunch of buttons, many different sizes and colors, and we're sending a mixed message. Which one's the most important? It's hard to tell. Many of these actually take you away from the site. Again, losing control of the user experience and not allowing us to fill our two main goals, which are getting people to learn Angular and having them install Angular. If we want to create a successful journey, we need to make it short and clear, and it needs to align with those two main goals that we set out. And last but not least, docs. We just have a ton of docs here. A bunch of overwhelming content, the navigation's confusing, and most importantly, there's no clear learning path to go from beginner to intermediate to advanced. It's really a struggle sometimes. Okay, so we know we got some problems. We touched on a few of them just briefly. But before we talk about solutions for these problems, I want us to think about the user a little bit. Who are we building this for? We need to ask this question right at the start. So in order to figure this out, we probably need some personas. So why don't we make some? We can talk about their hobbies, if they like walking on the beach, what kind of coffee they like to drink, maybe even have a picture. Sounds good, right? So why do all of us hate personas so much? Well, the problem with the regular persona is that no one understands them. They have all sorts of irrelevant information in them. And we end up spending most of our time talking about how much sugar Joe likes in his coffee instead of the things that are actually meaningful. We lose focus. So I want to try something different today. I'm going to give you guys a technique that we used on the Angular site that I used on Firebase. I call these KISS personas. In KISS personas, you only include the categories that are critical to your product, the things that actually matter, things that you really need to know when you're accounting for how your users are using your product. And the great thing about these is they keep you focused. Everyone understands them. Your developers, the product managers, the designers, execs, everyone gets them. They're simple. They're also really easy to create. You can create all these in 10 minutes and cover most of your use cases and get pretty much all the value that you need out of the persona. So we've talked about our users, we've talked about personas a little bit, but let's talk about how we want them to feel. Have you ever thought about how you want your users to feel when you're creating something? How do they feel? When we learn something new, there's a bunch of different emotions that we have. Tons of them. Some are good and some are bad. The good ones, clarity, confidence, safety, inspiration, relief, maybe even loyalty if you do a great job. But then there's the really bad ones that we're familiar with. Most of the people in this room have probably felt this at one time or another. Confusion, frustration, intimidation, maybe embarrassment, depression, and sometimes even despair. That's when you give up. So here's a few examples of what that might sound like. I can't wait to show my boss. You learn something new, you know it's valuable, you can't wait to show it off to your friends, your employees, boss. It means you can build something awesome, something new that you couldn't build before. And maybe it makes you loyal. I love these people. They gave me something that I didn't have before. These guys are awesome. And if you don't do a good job with this, sometimes you feel like this. Or maybe this. Why am I doing this? Maybe I need to find a new career. I just don't get it. and sometimes this. And the problem with this is this becomes your brand. This becomes who you are. And if you can create great feelings when someone's learning something, you create a strong brand that's going to last a long time. And if you don't, you create something else, and that lasts a long time too. So how do we make people feel good? Well, if we want to make people feel good, we've got to start by answering the questions that they have when they're learning something new on our site. We've got to figure out all those important questions that our users are going to ask when they're learning something. And we have to ask these questions from each one of their points of view. And sometimes the questions mean different things. We saw those personas briefly. We had beginners there, we had CEOs, people that were advanced, people that were using JavaScript or Dart. They mean different things. You've got to answer them. And if you do answer them, you have a much better chance at creating a great experience for your users. Okay, so we've covered a little bit of stuff so far, mostly theory, some of our goals, some of the problems that we had. But I want to actually talk about some of the goal-oriented design solutions and dig in to how we solve those on the new side. So I'm going to bust out of this real quick. We're going to take a look. All right. Okay, it works. So the first thing we did here with the new site is we removed all the distractions from the navigation, took them all away. So we could retain control of the user experience and really guide people to the two things that we know are important: getting people to learn Angular and getting them to install it. We also answered the most fundamental question that someone has when they come to the site: what is this thing that I'm looking at? That's all that there is there in the home page. And our primary and secondary action, they actually connect perfectly with the two goals that we set out for our site: to get people to learn it or to install it. We have some great consistency here with that message. Below that, you see our tertiary action, but that never interferes with our primary and secondary action. We're going to have conferences, we're going to have announcements, but they're not more important than someone learning how to use Angular and not more important than someone installing it. The very first thing we have here, very first paragraph actually highlights what it is again, reinforces that message. So if you missed it the first time, there it is. Angular is a framework for building incredible web applications. Now, if we answer that question really well, what is this? What is this thing? The next question someone's going to have is, well, is this for me? And so without getting too technical and showing too much code, we need to speak to the developer here. Most developers do want to start quickly and build fast. Showing them some code samples that actually prove that helps quite a bit. If you're a developer and you want to use open source products, we speak to that as well. And right below that, we follow up by assuring you that millions of people are also using this framework. This is something that you may want to look at too. Every single page has our primary and secondary action that goes right into our two goals: learning more or downloading this library. And at the bottom of our page, we have links to all the libraries, learning materials, help materials in our community. So if we answer those two questions for a developer platform, there's another question that people might have. They know that this is for them, they know what it is, but does this have the features they're looking for? Does this have what I need to build the product that I'm trying to accomplish? So that's what the features page does. On the features page, it's kind of interesting. We're giving you the information and answering this question: this is have what I need, but we're not doing it just for developers. We're doing this for everyone that comes to the site. CEOs, managers, people that want to know why their development team is actually using this to build their product. It's probably going to be around for a while. These are big decisions. So everyone has a stake in this. And at the bottom of this page, again, The question is, what's next? Well, learn more, or learn in 5 minutes, or download. So if we've answered those questions really well, what is this? Is this for me? Does this have the products? Does this have the features that I need to build my product? For an open source framework, there's usually one more question that you're interested in. Who builds this? Who's behind this? I want to know that it's going to be around. I know that I've used some open source frameworks and, the authors have disappeared. It's frustrating. So that's why our About page takes such a high place in our navigation, because we want you to know who's behind this project and that there's a ton of great people contributing this, so we can give you confidence when you're making this choice. So let's talk about docs now. We've answered all those questions. Someone's ready to learn. And they come here. They come to our Angular docs. And when you look at our docs, there's a few things that you should notice here when you're trying to teach your users. We make our primary actions, our 3 primary actions, dead simple. They line up with beginner, intermediate, and advanced. We want to create a learning path for all 3 of these user types. Our quick start is the first one that we lead with, because everyone starts as a beginner. Even if you're an advanced developer, when you're learning a framework for the first time, you come in as a beginner. It's short and to the point. David highlighted a little bit of this in his talk. And it's really designed to not waste your time. Developers are busy. We want to introduce them really quickly to this framework and see if it's something that they want to use and allow them to move on if it's not. And I think by showing them how simple it is and how easy it is to get going, I think we have a much better chance at that. The step-by-step guide is the next thing. And this guide is really designed to take you from beginner to intermediate. And I think this is one thing that most people miss. If you don't provide that learning path to get someone from beginner to intermediate to advanced, who else is going to? Sometimes nobody. And if you look at our step-by-step guide, we take you through getting started, and on the bottom of every page, we answer what's next by giving you a link to the next step in the guide. Finally, we have our API. And our API is really designed for advanced users, intermediate or advanced users. When people get here, these are developers that are often in the middle of creating something. It could be a production application. It could be improving an application that's existing. But we spent a lot of time trying to make it dead simple for someone to navigate this and not feel intimidated by the navigation. It's really easy to explore all these different classes, variables, and functions. So the other thing that we did that I think is really critical is we created a style guide. Let me see if I can. If you want good documentation, you got to get your whole team involved. Everyone's got to write the docs, all the developers. But you need to provide them with great tools. And so we created a style guide, and the purpose here is to empower the entire team with the tools and the resources that they need to create those beautiful docs. All the code examples, specifying different languages, highlighting, giving them alerts for important information that they need to call out, different callouts, tables, asides, all the different UI components that someone's going to need just for docs when they're trying to write great documentation. This is hugely important, and we've seen the success of this at Firebase as well. And so the very last thing that we have is, this also works on mobile. Let's see if I can get this. The entire site is designed to work on mobile because we want to greet customers or people that are using Angular, developers, where they're comfortable. Any device that they try to read our docs on, we want to meet them there. People are often sharing this, or they're commuting. and providing a great mobile experience for them is really important for us. Okay. So that's it. I'm going to recap real quick and just go over the stuff that we talked about. These are some of the methods that we used for the new Angular site and also for the Firebase docs as well. Defining clear goals that support each one of your pages. Identifying your current challenges. Understanding your users, who you're actually building this for. And designing with your goals in mind. Thanks for having me, you guys. If you guys have any questions, please come over and find me or follow me on Twitter. See you guys. Thanks.